And you're probably thinking U.S. have been giving significant and consistent current account deficits since 1982. Why is the U.S. dollar not depreciating overall? I mean, let's look at the trade weighted uh, exchange rates. This is data from Fred, which is short for Federal Reserve Economic Data. It's maintained by Federal Reserve of St. Louis. Let's look at 10 years. About 10 years ago, about it was about 95, it's now 120. There is some improvement, partly because US have been growing more, but you would actually US dollar is actually appreciating because this indexes the value of dollars against foreign currencies. So what gives? You have all that current account deficits. Why is US dollar appreciating? I mean, back in 1972, those current account deficits resulted in attack on US currency, which resulted in US abandoning gold standard. And Bretton Woods collapsed because of that. But now we have flexible exchange rates. If Turkey, a country like Turkey, had been giving current account deficits like that, it probably would have had very significant depreciation of its currency. But US is not doing that. What do you think is going on? So in a sense, people have been demanding more US dollars. What is one thing that people buy from US that is not part of current account deficits? Current accounts? Two things, actually. There is no NVIDIA in Japan, okay? If you want to buy shares of NVIDIA, no, they're sold here. So a Japanese pension fund buying NVIDIA, that money comes in as portfolio investment, but that money also tends to stay. There's obviously foreign direct investment too, but not as much as the other way around. Uh, but people also buy debt of US government, especially China. Technically speaking, portfolio investments are fickle, but there is no way China can dump $1 trillion of treasuries without actually hurting themselves. Because if you dump 1 trillion of treasuries, you're going to depress the treasury bond prices so much, you're going to hurt your selling price. So it's like a mutual issue of destruction. I mean, China can threaten to, they have a weapon to destabilize US financial markets, but in order to do that, they have to help themselves as well. Unless US and China are in a war, that's not going to happen. And since both of them are nuclear weapons to annihilate each other 5 times over, that's not going to happen either. Let's see. Let's look at If you have a table in 2023, it narrowed down to $800 billion. Okay. Uh, and trade deficits was almost a trillion. Yes. A little bit. They haven't defaulted, but they came close in 2011. Uh, if for those of you who may not know, there's a stupid U.S. law that says there's a debt limit. Okay, there's only so much U.S. can borrow. Mm. If you think about it naively, that's a good thing. But on the other hand, there is no limit on how much budget deficit the U.S. can have. Well, if there's a budget deficit, somehow U.S. has to pay for that. Well, you make up the difference by borrowing. So every once in a while, U.S. hits that limit. So they have to go back to Congress, ask for that limit to increase. They always increase it, but it also kind of became, especially after the Tea Party movement in 2010, political hot potato. Whenever a Democrat is in charge, suddenly the Republicans are hawks when it comes to debt. Whenever there's a Republican in charge, they got no problem with that. And U.S. came this close to defaulting back in 2011. And in fact, Standard and Poor's downgraded U.S. debt to AA instead of AAA, which is also stupid. No country would ever default on a loan that is denominated in its own currency. You, as a kind of last resort solution, Treasury was seriously considering. U.S. is also different from other countries. Federal Reserve has the right to print the paper money. Treasury has the right to print the coins. And in law, there is nothing that limits the size of the coin. So you can print a silver coin that's the size of this computer and call that $1 trillion. You can then Treasury can take that to Federal Reserve, deposit it there, and Federal Reserve will give them money, and they can make payments. Of course, that will create a lot of inflation, but nobody would default on it. So it did have an effect. But everybody pretty much knew that it's a game of chicken. I haven't seen any game of chicken among minimally sane people that didn't result with at least one person swerving. So nobody takes them seriously anymore. But Republicans in 2011 were less than minimally sane, especially in the House. Senate typically tend to be a little bit saner people. That also changed over time. Like there's actually an age limit to become a member of Senate. You have to be 35, I believe, and you have to have a college degree. For House, I think 18 is the age. I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken, or 25, one of those. Yeah, 25. And given the way U.S. election system is, you get one representative per district, but the allocation of those districts are done partisan way. That means there are a lot of districts where if you win the nomination of one party or the other, you're guaranteed to win the election. You know, for example, first district in Kentucky, it's probably 80% red. If you win the Republican nomination, you're going to win the general election unless something major happens. That means the winner actually is determined in primaries. And unfortunately, reasonable people are a lot less likely to vote in primaries, which means the extreme people voted. So extreme people go into places like House. It happens for both parties, but it tends the last 15 years, it tends to be more of an issue for the Republican Party. I mean, how do you explain Donald Trump winning the Republican nomination back in 2016?